What would Formula One be without the controversy? After all, in such a complex sport, there are a million different ways to cheat. From a highly unusual 6-car race to some very suspicious photocopies. These are the 8 biggest controversy in the history of F1. Number 8. The Ferrari engine scandal. Back in 2019, Ferrari's engines seemed to be looking really good. And I mean really good. So good, in fact, that some of the other teams became suspicious. However, as far as the fans knew, nothing came of it. Ferrari ended the 2019 season in second place behind Mercedes. The following year, things didn't look so good for Ferraris, as their engines were moving at a notably slower pace. This resulted in the team from Maranello dropping to an embarrassing 6th place that season. So what really happened? Believe it or not, fans found out the truth from a Twitch stream. I know, it's crazy. FIA Commissioner Mika Salo eventually came forward when he was streaming live. It turns out that the FIA had deemed the 2019 Ferrari engine to be illegal. And guess what? They decided not to tell anyone about it. Ferrari was sanctioned by having their fuel usage limited in the 2020 season. And this of course played a big part in the team's poor performance. Man, it makes you wonder how much is actually going on behind the scenes. Number 7. The crazy story of the F1 race that only featured 6 cars. Wait, 6 cars? Yup, this actually happened, and it all came down to the tires. Nowadays, Pirelli has an exclusivity contract with Formula One. But back in 2005, cars were using Bridgestone or Michelin. This became an issue during the United States Grand Prix in Indianapolis. So what's so special about Indianapolis? Well, turn 13 is a banked turn, and this means the turn has a slight slope towards the right. After a number of crashes in qualifying, Michelin discovered that their tires were damaged by sideways friction caused by the slope. And not just that, a recent change in the tarmac also affected the tire's reaction. The tire brand declared that the race was unsafe for the 7 teams they provided for. Luckily for the fans, Bridgestone tires were working fine. But Bridgestone only provided tires for 3 of the teams. That meant that on race day, only 6 cars were allowed to race. Can you imagine paying all that money for a ticket and you only get to see 6 cars? Number 6 involves one of the all-time greats, Michael Schumacher. A year after the 6-car race incident, Schumacher was well in the fight for the world championship. But who could beat him? A young Fernando Alonso, who had won the 2005 championship, wanted more. Qualifying for the Monaco Grand Prix saw both drivers push to the edge for pole position. Schumacher's Ferrari was looking great that season, and it gave Michael the pole position with 1 lap to go in qualifying. But on this lap, Michael wasn't looking great. Alonso, on the other hand, was flying towards his fastest lap. Schumacher needed a plan. In a stroke of genius, Schumacher went wide on purpose in the last corner and stalled when he was getting out. This caused the yellow flags to come out and the qualifying was over. Of course, this meant Alonso couldn't finish his lap. As you can imagine, the Spaniard wasn't happy. And neither were the race stewards. Schumacher was sent to the back of the grid for his behavior, and the 2006 World Championship went once again to Fernando Alonso. Number 5. This one's very strange. The 2007 F1 season was probably even crazier than 2006. Ferrari once again came out with a very strong car, but it would have to face the impressive team that McLaren had created with the 2 most exciting drivers on the grid, Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. There had been some trouble at Ferrari after their chief mechanic didn't receive the promotion he was expecting, and he was very angry at his team. And you won't believe what he did next. The mechanic actually started leaking information about Ferrari's car to McLaren. That's right, their biggest rivals were getting premium inside knowledge. But it gets even crazier when you hear how they got caught. McLaren engineers decided to make some photocopies at a local copy shop. What were they thinking? Turns out that somebody at the shop was a Ferrari fan, so he contacted Ferrari and told them. Sounds like a storyline from one of the clumsiest spy movies ever. Number 4. It's Fernando Alonso embroiled in controversy once again. Man, this guy is involved in a lot of stuff. Only this time, he's the one doing the cheating. Fast forward to 2010, and Alonso is racing with Ferrari. Team orders had been banned in 2002 in another incident involving Schumacher. But long story short, teams weren't allowed to tell drivers to let their teammates overtake them. So when Felipe Massa passed Alonso and Vettel in the Hockenheim Grand Prix, Ferrari decided to get creative. The team decided to tell Massa that Alonso was faster than him, repeatedly, again and again, until Massa gave in and let Alonso pass. This is probably what led to the FIA canceling the rule, as they realized it was unenforceable. And just like that, we're on to the top 3 biggest Formula One controversies ever. Number 3, we're going way back to 1982. The 80s and 90s were important years in making drivers' voices heard. I mean, these are the guys who are risking their lives and putting on the show. But back in the day, drivers' rights were minimal. In 1982, it was announced that drivers wouldn't be allowed to criticize FISA, the institution that directed Formula One before the FIA. Apart from that, teams would be allowed to swap drivers without their consent. The drivers weren't happy, and led by legend Niki Lauda, they decided that they wouldn't race in the San Marino Grand Prix. Luckily, the FISA saw the error in their ways and decided to compromise. Moving on. Number 2. The 2021 season was spectacular. There's nothing better than a championship being decided by the last lap in the race. Lewis Hamilton was in the lead in lap 56, followed by Max Verstappen. Whoever won the race would win the championship, and Hamilton looked like he was on his way to glory. That is, until the safety car came out. This looked like trouble. Red Bull sprang to action and sent Verstappen in for a pit stop and new tires. During lap 57, Max made the most of the safety car and passed the 5 lapped cars between him and Hamilton. Lap 58 was the final lap, and boy, what a lap it was! With fresh tires, Max took over and raced over the finish line in first position, taking the championship with him. But Mercedes wasn't happy with this. They argued the safety car should have allowed all the cars to be unlapped, not just the ones between Max and Lewis. But the FIA was having none of it, and Max Verstappen was confirmed as the champion. Finally, number 1. We have an absolute classic. Formula One was a wild place in 1989. Alain Prost was leading the Drivers' Championship with 2 races to go. The only driver who could stop him was his own teammate, Ayrton Senna. Senna needed to win the final 2 races to win the championship, but Prost couldn't allow that to happen. Sure enough, the pair were leading the race at the Japan GP, with Senna ferociously attacking from behind. The Brazilian finally spotted an opening and tried to take Prost from the inside, but Prost wouldn't let him through. He closed the door and both drivers crashed out. Ouch! Senna, however, was pushed back into the race and drove straight to victory. But his victory was short-lived. Senna had driven back into the track by skipping the chicane. The victory was later stripped, and Prost controversially took the World Championship. Decades later, Senna fans still haven't forgiven the FIA for this decision. And there you have it. Those were 8 of the biggest Formula One controversies ever.